The Orks, also known as the Greenskins, are primarily a horde melee faction in Dawn of War. Today I'm diving into each of their units about roles and cost efficiency, some specific Ork faction mechanics, Ork strengths and weaknesses, and then a little bit about build orders too, and how you might open in multiplayer games. By the end of this video you should be more comfortable when unleashing the full power of the Waaagh! Quick disclaimer. This video is mainly aimed at low to mid skill level players. I'm definitely not a pro player, I'm just a guy who loves the game and has a bit too much time on his hands. If I've missed something or got something wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comments and add positively to future Ork players.
She's gonna make it nice and strong.
These little grots are the smallest and weakest Orks, hence they get pushed around to do all the manual labour. They can be reinforced for free into a larger pack, which I think increases their build speed slightly. They have tiny little guns that can act as a ranged attack, but in terms of damage it's the equivalent of them throwing their own poo.
I'm not doing anything.
But realistically they shouldn't be attacking anything because you'll be able to upgrade them to be infiltrated. But it's probably not best to do this in tier 1 as you'll need the cash.
Where's the fighting?
Your basic melee squad that's meant for initial point capping. Cheap, fast to reinforce, and fairly hardy compared to some other starting units. They won't win duels against heavy melee like Chaos Raptors or Assault Marines, but for the price they're great for tying up ranged units. Best used in numbers and supported by knob leaders later on. With a few upgrades from the pile of guns, you can sometimes be surprised how much pain sluggers can dish out.
We better be going to a fight.
These boys are your early game ranged infantry for Orks. Starting as a squad of 4, they can be pretty weak, but with numbers, some upgrades and a bit of control, they can get quite a bit done. While slugger boys are your point cappers, shooters are more often used as an early harass unit together with the big mech. Run them around the map dealing damage to enemy builders or cappers and you can quickly have the advantage. Reinforce quickly and cheaply, making them very forgiving in scrappy fights. Once you get the pile of guns building, you're able to start upgrading to big shooters with these guys, and their damage starts to improve drastically.
Time for a war from above.
Jump Infantry, Orks' answer to mobility. Great for disrupting enemy firing lines or chasing fleeing units, they're fragile for their cost, so you need to pick your jumps very carefully. In tier 1, a well-timed Stormboy jump can completely swing a fight.
Hold on to the pin. Throw the other part.
These are the dedicated anti-vehicle squads. They're expensive to field and reinforce, but vital once enemy armor rolls out. Oh, leave my poor tank busters alone. While they're good for vehicles and also excellent for buildings, maybe their best attribute is the upgrade you can do to infiltrate them. That's right, invisible rocket launcher toting Orks. One downside of these guys is their accuracy. These dudes are wildly inaccurate and it feels like just under half their shots sail past the target. But when they do hit, they hit hard.
Big is best.
This is the heavy melee elite of the Orks. Costly in both requisition and power, but they dominate infantry once they're on the field. With upgrades, knobs are nearly unkillable without concentrated anti-infantry fire. They usually mark the turning point where the Ork army starts to feel unstoppable. If you need some extra vehicle or building damage, you can outfit a few with power claws. It's quite an expensive upgrade, so be careful that you have the economy for it. Power claws are great for tearing machinery apart, but honestly, you may be better served by just getting tank busters.
There's things to shoot over there.
God, I love Flash Gits, an excellent name for an excellent unit. These boys are the embodiment of DACA, the ultimate ranged damage unit for the Orks. Armed with snaz guns, the sheer amount of bullets they can fire per minute is just poetry. Good for just about anything, but really specifically deadly against infantry. You're limited to a maximum of 2 of these units, because any more and it wouldn't be fair on the Humies.
It's gonna hurt a lot, but you'll be better.
This is a later game unit that you can attach to your squads for a bit of extra punch. He has the Fighting Juice ability that amps up the squad's staying power and essentially doesn't let the model's health go below 1, so they're unkillable for a limited time. This can come in handy for those take and hold critical points that you might need to urgently decap. If you pop some juice and decap away, safe in the knowledge that the squad won't die for a short period. Doc also has an interesting ability to create an improvised explosive device and make huge boomy devastations. Be careful, those bombs do just as much damage to your boys as to the enemy, so get the hell out of there.
I got the good bits for this fight.
This dude is great for early harass when you attach it to a unit of shooter boys at the start of the game. He gives these shooter units great mobility with his teleporter. As every Ork hero is able to, he can see infiltrated units and is one of the few detector units. Being a mechanic, he can repair vehicles on the fly and is actually faster than Gretchen's in that ability. If you upgrade his custom gadgets, he can shoot this big zapper and take vehicles down, stunning them nicely. He's not as tanky as other heroes, so you have to be a little bit careful with him. His health runs about 1300.
Sounds stupid, but okay.
These dudes are slow, armoured big boys that can do really great damage and have high health bars to soak incoming damage. You can speed them up at a cost of slowly draining their health, and they are big, lumbering melee tanks. Think of them like knobs in less good Terminator armour and you'll be somewhere in the ballpark. Sounds unimpressive? I wouldn't say that in front of them. Also, they're a detector unit, so they can see infiltrated stealthy humies or Tau and crump 'em good.
I lead, Orks follow.
The war boss is the biggest of all the Orks and hence why he's the boss. He has the most health of any commander in the game and is great at melee. He's got a passive aura improving the performance of surrounding Orks, and he has an active ability known as Wah, which provides surrounding Orks with immunity to moral damage as well as increasing their movement and their damage dealt.
This is my war trap. Pretty nice, huh?
Trucks give the Orks mobility on the battlefield, and their machine guns are pretty handy to mow low-level infantry down. They can be very necessary and add a lovely amount of mobility to your shooting units, and this can come in clutch when facing other low-level infantry.
War tracks is as shooty as there is.
Tracks are lightly armoured rocket sleds that move really fast around the field of battle. They're quite useful for both attacking vehicles, and after upgrading a bomb chucker, they can also disrupt infantry. They've got pretty low health for vehicles, and they have vehicle medium armour, so if they're focused they can fold pretty quickly, so best look after them if you're going to field them.
Which button makes this thing go?
Killer cans are the Ork version of dreadnoughts. Unlike the Space Marines waiting for an infirm or dying soldier to be welded into a dreadnought, the Orks just bolt any old volunteer they find into the can with no exit door. They're pretty hardy walkers and do excellent infantry damage out of the gate. They can be upgraded with a rocket launcher to also do vehicle damage. I often stick with my tank busters for vehicle damage and leave these guys to do good infantry damage. It's sometimes necessary to have your big mech or infiltrated Gretchens nearby to help repair these guys because they won't do so hot in a 1v1 versus say a dreadnought. The tanks are a late game powerhouse providing heavy firepower for the Orks. These repurposed Imperial tanks were liberated by big mechs and just made to be more Orky. In the process they've lost some of their hardiness but can still take some decent punishment.
Fly boys ready, boss!
Fighter bombers are the Orks air support unit, complete with 3 big shooters and a bunch of grot bombs. The shooters are good, but I find the infantry disruption from the grot bombs ridiculously good.
We're under attack!
Oh, I bleed!
It's honestly pretty filthy. 2 or 3 of these in the air and nothing that has legs is left standing. They also attack from a decent range, which keeps them a little bit safer. If Legolas shot this down with his elf bow, it would still only count as 1, but the Squiggoth is still a massive Orky threat. Very similar to the Oliphant, or whatever the hell they call it in Lord of the Rings, this thing has a bunch of Orks with guns on its back, a massive zap gun that obliterates armor and buildings. It's also no slouch in close quarters and stomps its enemies into paste. It has a huge health pool in the realms of about 10,000, and it can also be repaired, increasing its longevity. Its downside is the fact that it's so frickin' big. Trying to maneuver this behemoth around the field can be quite a frustrating exercise, resulting in many 3-point turns. Unlike other factions who have specific detector units, the Orks rely on their hero units to do their detecting. So if you're coming up against sneaky Dark Eldar or Tau stealth suits, you'll need to make sure that you've got the big mech out in the early game. Mid-game you're looking at having the mega armoured knobs, and in the late game the war boss. If you're retreating from a greater threat and your boys need a breather, you can garrison them in the listening posts or the barracks buildings, which will shield them from further damage for a short time. Keep in mind they won't be shooting out of the building like the Imperial Guard can, and they won't be able to reinforce their numbers while inside, but it's something that may come in handy to break line of sight, break line of attack, and re-engage nicely. Orks don't tech like anyone else. Instead of research buildings or command centers, they rely on building war banners to unlock higher tech tiers, as well as increase their population cap. So let's talk about population first. Where other races build a unit of Space Marines initially with only 4 models, you can use the reinforce button to strengthen the unit with more models up to a set maximum. The only thing you need is the cash to pay for them. Orks, however, are different. Each war banner you build gives you an increase on the maximum number of models you can field. Whether that's 2 units of 4 or 1 unit of 8, it all adds up to the same amount of Orks. With no banners, you're able to field 15 models at the very start of the game. If you build one war banner, your maximum suddenly jumps from 15 to 25 models. Build a second banner, and now you can field a max of 35 Ork boys, and so on. Upgrading your technology is also tied to how many war banners you have. One banner gets the equivalent of tier 1.5, allowing the pile of guns, which is your infantry upgrade center. This is the equivalent of the Space Marines armory. 2 banners get you access to an armor upgrade and 3 banners to a melee upgrade. With 4 banners, you're headed into getting knobs and the vehicle factory called the mech shop. While this can advantage the Orks in taking up a little bit faster than their enemies, it's also true that enemies would likely target your banners to bump you down tech levels to really ruin your day, so be careful with placement. A lot of Ork buildings have shooters on their roofs, allowing some small defensive measures unlike other factions. The damage is not brilliant, but effective against lower level infantry, enough to dissuade some levels of harassment. The buildings also have slow auto heal ability, so if your listening posts are being damaged, provided they're not totally destroyed, over time they regain their health bar. As mentioned above, as you tech up and unlock access to the war boss, you'll be able to declare a war, which upgrades your unit movement, your damage, and your immunity to morale attacks. Essentially, your Orks go berserk and you get to watch the slaughter. At the end of your tech tree, you'll gain the ability to field sluggers for free by researching more sluggers. You can build an extra barracks and permanently be building slugger squads and send them somewhere to tie up enemy resources. Do be aware though that the sluggers still count in your Ork population, so it's not an infinite source of bodies. Generally speaking, Tier 1 Orks excel with sluggers and shooters. They can overwhelm Eldar and Imperial Guard if played aggressively, but be mindful that the big mech can get targeted. In Tier 2, it's a little bit mixed. This is usually when the Orks have their weakest point. Other factions start to field elite infantry with heavy weapons and vehicles before the Orks hit critical mass. Orks have to rely on war tracks and tank busters to survive until knobs and looted tanks arrive. Tier 3 Orks seem to be a little bit better. Now you have knobs and you may even have flash kits, which when upgraded and supported with some vehicles, they can feel really powerful. Ork's Tier 4 unit, the Squiggoth, I find a little hard to control. It's quite big and it can have pretty bad pathing issues. It does a lot of damage and it tanks massively, but it can be a little bit of a toss-up as to whether it's actually worth it or not.
Puny elder! You could send after boys home!
Map control is really key. You may want to go for a Mork style opener and open up with 3 sluggers to capture the map faster than those puny Eldar. Farseer can mind war and make real problems for your big mech. Dark Reapers can ultimately decimate sluggers, so be careful and retreat when necessary. You can use Gretchens to tie up squads in melee if you need, but make sure to do damage with other squads lest your Gretchens get wiped out very quickly. Some Eldar will go with a turret or mines to fight against potential Stormboy harass. Tier 2 is a difficult time for Orks against Eldar. Falcon tanks with double Dark Reapers become a real threat, but likewise Orks can build a few war trucks and mow Dark Reaper infantry down, with sluggers being able to tie up dangerous squads like fire dragons. Harlequins can be an absolute pain in the arse if they go for your knobs or your tank busters. When they're backed up by warp spiders or reapers, it's a bit of a bugger. Eldar also have the ability to go for 2 economy upgrades, unlike most other races, bar the Tau, which makes them a formidable opponent even if you have more map control than them. Hence why it's so important that Ork players dominate map control and stay in the fight. Be aware of upgraded warp spiders later in Tier 3 onwards, because they're actually stronger than flash kits in most ways and they're way more mobile.
Marine boys approaching!
Orks probably have a slight advantage against Space Marines, although the Force Commander can easily deal with your big mech in melee. Most players are likely to mass attack Marines against you, and just because it's really effective. To stay competitive against this, you really need an excellent start with good harass and teching as fast as you can. As the game progresses, that slight advantage starts to shift towards the Space Marine player. I feel a lot of the time you beat Marines mostly by rushing and out-teching them.
I see you, me's!
Guard in Tier 1 is fairly easily scared off by sluggers, big mech and shooters, so getting map control shouldn't be too much of an issue. Guard players are likely to play defensively up until partway through Tier 2 and then mass upgraded guardsmen, which is such a bugger to deal with. Keep in mind, Guard can effectively defend and garrison buildings while shooting out of them, so they'll likely be biding their time and avoiding conflict through Tier 1. Ork Harass is good, and the main aim is to destroy economy buildings to delay their economy. Guard turrets can devastate boys and put you on the back foot very quickly, so best to retreat and refocus elsewhere if you spot those. Thankfully, Guard are not particularly mobile until they get transport, so multi-prong attacks work well, particularly with Storm Boys and Knob Leaders. Tier 2, you're probably seeing grenade upgrades on their troops, and you'll soon see some Hellhounds or Chimeras. Make sure to fully reinforce your Storm Boys before engaging higher tier Guardsmen, or your boys will get crumped. Your Big Mech custom gadget ability is key before you get tank busters to deal with any armor. If the game goes into Tier 3, you'll be facing fully upgraded Guardsmen with Basilisk backup, and that can really ruin an entire Ork horde. Add in some Sentinels and you can kiss your fungal ass goodbye. You can counter with War Tracks and Fighter Bombers, but if the game goes much further, it'll start to swing in Guard's favour, so it's always best to shut them down as early as you can. IG can be a little bit of a tough matchup for Orks, I reckon.
Spiky boys are coming!
Heretics are extremely vulnerable to big mech ranged attacks and die with 2 or 3 shots, so make the most of that with harassment. Shooter boys with big shooters are also excellent value. Join your shooters with the Stormboy flanks and you'll be doing a really good job of turning an early Chaos Infantry army around and forcing a retreat. Aim to harass to the point you delay their upgrades to heavy bolters and getting Sorcerer out, because that will signal the point that you may need to retreat and tech up a bit more, or maybe harass elsewhere, lest the boys get shredded and morale beaten to oblivion.
Boss? Who is getting shot up?
DOW are pretty weak early game, so they're very vulnerable to rush. They'll either open defensively and try and stall, keeping their fire warriors running around while aiming to field a devilfish eventually. This will nicely negate their movement weakness and protect against Ork melee strength.
I'm just chewing through this tower base.
Or the other way they can do is counter harass with Vespids, hoping to do early economy damage to you, delaying your tech up. This is pretty risky because Vespids are expensive, and if it fails, they're totally cooked. Against Fire Warriors, Storm Boys are a necessity, but make sure to keep them reinforced and sync their attacks, otherwise they can get picked off really quickly by any Fire Warriors that are not engaged. The Big Mech is an excellent counter to Devilfish carrying troops, as he both detects the infiltrated unit and can stun them if you've upgraded the custom gadget. Barracudas in Tier 2 can be a bit rough, but again, the Big Mech stun ability and infiltrated tank busters are the answer here. Key units against DOW are going to be Storm Boys for the Fire Warriors, Knobs to soak damage, Big Mech for inevitable vehicles teamed with tank busters to do as much damage through Tier 1 and Tier 2. If DOW survives to Tier 3 with their economy intact, I think it can get very difficult.
Friggin' Mock! What's that?
This is pretty decently in Ork's favour, I reckon, most of the time on maps with a good amount of strategic points. If you're going for an early strong harass, be prepared to face a Necron turret or upgraded obelisk. If you see either or both, you may want to rethink your approach because they will pretty decently deal with anything you can throw at this early stage. You'll be unopposed in gaining points on the map, and going for a really strong economy will be a good idea. It's an absolute gimme to get 3 sluggers and capture the entire map. Make sure to deny the Necron's big generator on slag deposits at all costs. Orks mostly do pretty decently against Necron warriors and will struggle more against flayed ones, which are slower but more melee focused, matching Orks nicely. Necrons with an unopposed economy expansion will snowball more than any other race, I think, so the best way to counter is probably good map control with focus on economy and then harass and focus on their power structures. If you get to Tier 3 quick as you can, getting Knobs out and Storm Boys that are fully reinforced and some mega armoured Knobs, they'll act as really nice damage sponges. Overall, I feel like the Fork build order is something maybe to consider against Necrons.
Kincaid Hoovies are here!
Sisters can either open with standard battle sisters upgrading to early flamers, which will hurt your morale, or they'll do early harass with seraphims. The other strategy that's common amongst sister players is the Celestian mass. Celestians are really good against infantry or vehicles, and so they're very potent with hordes of them come knocking on your door.
Whoa! Jeez, they shoot through troops, don't they?
Yep.
While Knobs are normally great against infantry, it can be a little bit controversial with the sisters when the Confessor is out. He has a nasty stun ability, can freeze Knobs in 15 seconds, and then they just get focus fired down. Also, keep in mind that Seraphims can literally fly circles around them. From what I understand, it may be better to try tying sisters up with storm boys and damage with shooters, eventually going with a war truck to ferry them around. And then later on, when you get spam with Celestians, counter with flash kits. Just make sure to support your flash kits with tank busters or war tracks in case of penitent engines, whose fire really makes flash kits sad pandas.
Enemies for stomping!
Dark Elder players will expect harass and will likely have 2 to 3 Mandrake squads to both cap and deal with your harassment. Warrior squads are glass cannons, and 2 of them are pretty decent threat to your boys. If the Archon gets a torture amp down, it can slow your boys similar to Tau Commander's snare trap, and warriors will absolutely shred shooters into tissue paper. I'm not sure about the efficiency of shooter boys against warriors because they absolutely seem to get hard countered due to higher damage and their lower health. It may be best for an early harass to destroy LPs and decap, then focus on defensive style with Orks. As the game goes later, Orks have more and more ability to shut Dark Eldar down. Do keep an eye out for jet bike spam from DE players, which you'll have to hard counter with fast tech towards custom gadgets or tank busters ASAP. Can't really think how else to fight this attack. Any other ideas are welcome in comments. Here's the section where we talk about how to really screw over Ork players. Let's talk about Ork weaknesses. Early game, Orks will likely come out swinging. They'll have sluggers for capping and big mech shooter combos for harassing. Shooter boys do decent damage, but they are also pretty squishy. That big shooter upgrade is expensive, but they'll really lay down the hurt if you'll let them. The big mech too can dish out excellent range damage, but with some focusing will be forced to retreat because, as mentioned before, his health bar doesn't start out with the most hit points. Ork listening posts are just ramshackle crap bolted together, and has one of the lowest hit points of any faction listening post. If you're playing as Tau with the Vespered Stingwings, they can wreck Ork posts nicely. It's also probably worth noting that if you go after war banners, you can destroy these early on and it will really hurt their tech process. Tier 1 is pretty strong for Orks, but moving from 2 war banners to 4 war banners can be a little dicey and economic dependent. Once the knobs come out and you have good map control, Orks are usually in a pretty good place. Between 2 banners and 4 banners though, you'll often have only sluggers and shooters, and they can start to fall behind the power curve a little bit. Some factions will start fielding heavy infantry and vehicles, and the Orks can really struggle. Until they get knobs and tank busters, they'll be at a disadvantage, and this is probably the time to hit, because once Orks get flash kits, the pendulum can start to swing heavily the other way depending on the matchup. Some maps that are really good for Orks are Shrine of Ixalian, Battle Marshes, and Outer Reaches. These maps have a good amount of strategic points, as well as nice advantages for jump troops like Storm Boys. So, like every race, your opening build orders will vary depending on your opponent's faction. For the most part, you can open with Orks either very aggressively or fairly defensively. Think of like the Orks version of Tau's Montkar and Kaon. There's also a third way you could think about opening, which is like Montkar on steroids. But we're not Tau, we're Orks. So I'm going to call these the Gork opener, the aggressive one, the Mork opener, the cunning defensive one, and the Fork opener. Because, well, it's kind of fucking crazy for Orks. The Gork opener. Gork is all about getting stuck into them other boys. So I start by queuing up 2 sluggers and a Gretchen at the headquarters. Your current Gretchen is going to make a boys hut and a war banner. Send your sluggers to get the nearest strategic points and cap them with your Gretchens. Once you've got 3 LP1s up, you should have enough to build your second war banner. With that done, your focus is on fielding Storm Boys. The trick now is to keep your sluggers alive, capturing the map, while you aggressively harass with your Storm Boys. Head straight for the enemy base and do as much damage as possible. In the meantime, upgrade to a pile of guns, get your big mech out, and hopefully shut them all down. The Mork opener. Mork is all about cunning, and I like to think being cunning is being defensive and economy focused to get those heavy boys upgraded to crump anything that stands in our way. So start by queuing up 2 sluggers and a Gretchen at the headquarters. Your current Gretchen makes a boys hut and a generator. Sluggers cap and Gretchens pop up LP1s. From your boys hut, you're going to recruit a shooter boys and a big mech. Make the big mech attached to the shooter boys. Depending on who you're fighting, you may want the big mech before the shooters to detect infiltrated units like Tau, or you may want the shooters to take on melee focused races like Chaos. You want to attach the big mech to the shooters like I said before and start your way towards the undefended parts of the opponent's base. The real key is to try and look out for their builders and take them down. While they're on the way, keep gaining points on the map and look to getting some war banners when your economy allows, enabling the building of a pile of guns. Continue to tech up, get some war trucks or war tracks, and you should be looking pretty good. The Fork Opener. Forking your opponent is pretty dicey, but this opening essentially skips out the boys' hut and shooters in favour for upgrading your sluggers. So you open with 2 or 3 sluggers and a Gretchen like before. This time your Gretchen is going to build a generator and a war banner. No boys' hut needed. Gain points and LP1s as soon as economy allows, get the pile of guns, and as soon as it's built you could research the Mordaka ability, giving more range damage to your sluggers, but this is probably better for shooters, which we don't have, so it might be best to save the cash for the moment, but this is your choice. Start harassing their strategic points as you go, and reinforce your squads. With a second war banner up, you'll be able to research heavy armor for your sluggers, and after a third war banner, you'll have access to the more choppy research and be able to add a knob to each squad. Make sure you do this. From here, you should have a decent amount of the map and a pretty fair income. You can start to build the 4th war banner and a boys' hut. Once that's done, it's time to get a squad of knobs and a squad of tank busters and rush their base. It should still be fairly early in the game, so you should be doing significant damage and either win soon after, or you'll be repelled, and the match is likely going into overtime. So to sum up, Orks are all about momentum. Early game, they're brutal. Mid game, if you're not careful they can struggle, but if you reach late game tiers early, it can be an easier time with knobs, mega armoured knobs, flash gits and tank busters doing great damage. If you've out-teched your opponent, you'll likely do well, but if they've kept pace, you might struggle a little bit. Orks' war banner mechanic makes them unique. You're rewarded for aggression, expansion, and keeping the pressure on your opponent. Play passive and you'll likely fall behind. Play loud, fast, and brutal and you'll stomp the battlefield just like Gork and Mork intended. Or you'll be repelled and the mission You can use the reinforce button to strengthen the unit with more models up to set a The shooters are good, but I find the infantry disruption from the